was listening to in Romania. And I mean, I'm not overly fond of, but I get tired of people bashing her.
Okie dokie. We have in front of us, chapter 3 of this book, right?
I thought we weren't quite done with 2, but
Yeah, so let's, let us, Paula is right, we weren't sure that we were quite done with 2. So is there anything that where we want to wrap up? Chapter 2.
I thought the end of it was really important,
Okay,
the last part, but also there was another one I really underlined, that knowing some history about, on page 25, the bottom paragraph. about the
what does
modern-
it start with?
Modern interpretations are variations on the lies in which the man reigns supreme, with nature as his only adversary. And then it says God is either non-existent or unconcerned, and that was the lie. And so Israel, then it goes on with Israel, and I thought that that whole section about going on with to God or without God, and how the grace of God filled their life, and that those whole paragraphs were kind of important to read. And then going on in our modern, about 26 on the middle paragraph, the stories of immigrants.
How
to
does
the
it start?
shores.
My pages are
Among the-
different
oh,
than
I'm
yours.
sorry, among the more fascinating pages. of
Can you tell
American
me
history,
what the heading of the area is?
among the
among the
most fascinating.
It's just kind of goes right along with what's going on in the world today, I thought.
It's under a heading, I know that is a yes.
Thank you, that's what I was looking for.
Towards the end of the chapter.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that last section was. Yeah, because you had said at the end, Reverend Kathy, that the very last part, you added a word to the
Yeah.
lives of the world as yes to God. Yeah, so I thought that section was just to reread. It wasn't anything for, mind blowing, but just important to just go over. I'd like to know where Meshach and, were those actually people, places, Meshach and Kedar?
Yeah,
Okay.
Sharon had talked a little bit about them
Yes, you
last week.
did. I remember that. I just thought that was really good. So,
And
otherwise,
just the fact that we have to keep saying no to the lies of the world
Yeah, yeah,
continually.
and
Because
that's
boy,
what
they
was-
come fast and furious.
they sure do.
and they look so good.
And they look so good. That is the nature of temptation and seduction. They look so good.
No, I was happy to.
Anything else on, to tie up chapter 2? Okie dokie then. Psalm 121, chapter 3. Let's have a couple different translations.
I have the old King James, which I just love.
Okay,
I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore.
I have to admit, Jane, I am biased in favor of that kind of translation.
I don't
this-
understand it at all. I don't understand what the fascination is with it.
No, I just like the little literary thing about it. But I do understand, the one that he wrote is fine, but
I think his is wonderful. I think it
Well,
elicits.
even the revised standards.
Yeah,
she's good.
so many.
It's more
Which,
understandable.
which this one is too. This is not the.
So Jane Korsberg, do you have anything different?
Sure, I got the New Living. It says, I look up to the mountains. Does my help come from there? My help comes from the Lord who made the heavens and the earth. He will not let you stumble and fall. The one who watches over you will not sleep. Indeed, he who watches over Israel never tires and never sleeps. The Lord himself watches over you. The Lord stands beside you as a protective shade. The sun will not hurt you by day, nor the moon at night. The Lord keeps you from all evil and preserves your life. The Lord keeps watch over you as you come and go, both now and forever.
I think the new versions are very understandable and wonderful, but the King James, I remember hearing that as a little child in church, and there's some kind of a connection that really touches me about that.
Yeah.
I guess that's what happened to me too.
I guess I don't have any experience with it.
Yeah, when we heard the Psalms as a kid, they were King James.
I don't remember.
That
Me
King
too.
28 prayer book?
Yeah.
Are they?
We must have
think so.
used like the New Jerusalem or something when I was a kid.
Well,
It's
no,
all
this
good.
translation is fine and it makes perfect sense. It's just, for me, it's the literary issue, so don't mind.
And since this is, it's a paraphrase, and I
It
think
is,
the
it's not
main
the-
point of it is to be understandable.
Yes, exactly.
Reverend.
So
Kathy-
let's look at the quote from Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Isn't it? I'll read that out loud. But to deviate from the truth for the sake of some prospect of hope of our own can never be wise, however slight that deviation may be.
Ooh.
It is not our judgment of the situation which can show us what is wise, but only the truth of the word of God. Here alone lies the promise of God's faithfulness and help.
Mhm.
It will always be true that the wisest course for the disciple is always to abide solely by the word of God in all simplicity.
Ooh. Ooh.
But when I read that, I thought of the Christians in the Ukraine. How they.
When I read it, I thought it was a
Is there-
continuation of the
Where
Psalm.
whence
I just-
cometh my help.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, Jane.
I'm sorry. When I read it, I thought it was a continuation of Psalm 121 because I
Oh.
just flipped the page
Oh.
and I thought, wow, that's brilliant.
Well, it's still brilliant,
It's still brilliant.
just not the psalmist.
They're having services
Yeah.
in bomb shelters.
Yeah.
No fancy, just.
So what is, what I want us to talk and think about how this psalm operates in our own lives and how Peterson teaches us about this, because he's written some stuff here that I just had not thought about. I mean, for him to say that psalm, so the first big section at the very end, the last paragraph right before the traveler's advisory. Psalm 121 is the neighbor coming over and telling us that we are doing it the wrong way, looking in the wrong place for help. Psalm 121 is addressed to those of us who, disregarding God, gaze to a distance all around them and make long and devious circuits in quest of remedies to their troubles.
Mm.
I just had never, when I was in Rapid City in the Black Hills, Psalm 121 was one of those things that people sort of said, when I look up into the hills, I find God. And what Peterson is saying is that is wrong.
And that has been a problem for me, because when I first started reading this way back, you know, it was like I was going, well, why are they talking? I look to the hills and my God, and he's absolutely brilliantly right. No, and I think that that's been a misinterpretation.
It's according to him,
Yeah,
it
I
is.
mean, the
I-
Mother Superior uses the beginning
Yeah.
of that in The Sound of Music.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Climb
when
every
Maria's
mountain.
trying to,
Mhm.
no, she says,
Yeah,
beginning of 121, when she's helping Maria discern what path she should take.
Yeah.
And I always thought, look to the hills.
yeah, yeah.
Could it not be both? I mean, there's also the psalm that says about the good news on feet of those who come from the mountain.
Yeah, I
How
mean, I,
lovely on the mountain are the feet of him who brings good news.
yeah, yeah. I mean, this is Peterson's take on it.
Oh, yeah.
So I think I do hear loudly and clearly his admonition, Peterson's admonition, to look for God in all the right places.
Yeah.
And I think that that's kind of I mean, for me, that becomes
You know,
fascinating.
there is some time, and I don't do this, but I think of people, and actually there was a nun I worked with at St. William's, who's, you know, the idea that you find God in nature more than you do with people, which is like, well, whatever. But, you know, I think sometimes the psalm gets misinterpreted that way. That, yes, you can find peace in nature, but he's saying, no, God is in nature, but that's not the prime place you're gonna go to. Because that would have gone right back into some of the pagan things the Israelites were coming into. And then you say, and the right places are. Scripture, tradition. Okay, you know, there's a lot of Psalm 91 also has a relationship to this one too, because I'm thinking, you say, lest you dash your foot upon a stone. Psalm says he won't let you stumble. Interesting on the top of 34, what he's saying. This is at the last paragraph of Traveler's Advisory. Because either some of the best Christians have, you know, had anxiety and problems. Put that way, either I'm wrong, people I thought were Christians weren't, and the psalm doesn't apply to them, or the psalm is wrong. God doesn't do what the psalm claims and then goes on with it.
Yeah, so that next section, help from the hills. Then he continues that along that path there. And then he gets to the paragraph that begins, that is the kind of thing a Hebrew set out on the way of faith 2,500 years ago would have seen on the hills. It's what the disciples will see. A person of faith encounters trial or tribulation and cries, help, we lift our eyes to the mountains, and offers of help instant and numerous appear. Does my strength come from the mountain? No, is the answer. My strength comes from God who made heaven and earth and mountains. I'll look to the hills for help and in disappointment. For all their majesty and beauty, for all their quiet strength and firmness, they are finally just hills.
And as you go on relating to that, and I was thinking there's an allegory there, for the promises, for all the allurements of the priests and priestesses, they are finally lies. It rejects the worship of nature, a religion of stars and cardinals. sometimes.
Help comes from the creator, not from the creation. So let's kind of stay with that for a minute.
I've always, when I look to the hills, it's God above the hills, just above the hills in the heavens. And it isn't the hills that give me the love of God. It's God right above them. And that's the only interpretation I've ever had, I guess.
Okay.
I was thinking not only that very sentence, help comes from the creator, not from the creation. And we forget that mankind, humankind, is the creation.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I
Yes,
think of the word Emmanuel, I think Christ with us. We're not on top of the mountain, we're down here, and Christ is with
Oh.
us.
Mhm.
did that also, and this is kind of way offline, relate to people looking for mountaintop experiences as being their help?
Mm.
That's what, I think that could very well be. I think it has to do with, looking for help in all the wrong places.
Yeah,
But I think God created those places.
Right.
And I think he created places like the ocean and the hills, places where you could go to be alone, and maybe like Jesus going into the wilderness, a place where you could be more
Right.
aware.
Your
And-
senses. I wonder if it wouldn't help to talk about this using the word icon. That, the being able to see through to God. So that, I think many of us might say that out in God's wonderful created world in nature, we're able to quiet our spirits enough to receive, to hear what God might be saying, what spirit might be saying. I don't think he is saying that is wrong. I think what he is saying that a displaced hope that nature can, I don't know, nature can heal us. But nature can heal us sometimes.
It can.
I,
And it can, because,
Oh, yeah.
go ahead.
I think the word that's missing here is the word we used for the last couple of months, idolatry.
Mm-hmm.
That's the mistake, because any of us can look to the mountains and feel God, and any of us can look to the ocean and even go inside a church. It's all possible, but to make the mistake of creator for creation, that's idolatry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's exactly what he's getting at, maybe without using that particular
Right.
word, but yes, I think so. Jane Fine?
When I was at Mount Sinai, I realized that God met Moses up above the mountain, because he came back down from the mountain with his face all shining. He had to hide his face, but he had met God above the mountain. And he happened to be on the top of the mountain, but he met God up there. And that's the vision I have always had whenever we got these stories about, I will run to the hills to find my peace and quiet or whatever. God is above the mountain, and that's where you meet him.
Mm-hmm. So what Peterson is doing here now is taking that idea that our help is not to be found in idolatry. It is not to be found in the sort of the misplaced places, but our help is to be found in God. And he doesn't say this, but in God alone. And that paragraph that comes right after the one we were just pointing at, the promise of the Psalm, and both Hebrews and Christians have always read it this way, is not that we shall never stub our toes, but that no injury, no illness, no accident, no distress will have evil power over us. That is,
In the
will
middle of,
be able to
36.
separate us from God's purposes in us. So that is,
Reminds me of, if God is for us,
Who
Who can be against it,
Romans
yeah.
8, I just read that
Yeah.
today, no,
yeah,
36, okay.
Yeah.
yet again, I go back to Ukraine, and if they read,
This.
God guards you from every evil.
how do you believe that?
Boy,
Well, so
you
that's,
gotta dig deep.
I mean, I think that that's, you know, I've been reading, this one, John Pavlich's Rise. Oh my gosh, the water just drained from my ear and I can now hear. Oh,
Took mine 2 weeks after
oh.
Maui.
oh my gosh.
It's from her swim.
There it goes. Oof, da. Okay. Whew, I couldn't hear a word Ann was saying.
I'm sorry.
So this idea, I mean, because that's, I think, isn't that the hardest, for me, it's the hardest thing, you know? I live in this cushy, privileged
Mhm.
existence. My particular set of challenges are
Minuscule.
Yes.
minuscule. I mean, in
Nothing.
even in the sadness and
Yes.
the grief, this is an ordinary sadness and grief
That we all
that every single person experiences.
don't have to leave our homeland and
Right.
become
Right.
refugees and have no idea if we're ever gonna see anything normal
Right.
again.
Yeah.
And and it's the same thing as the Jews in concentration camps for me. How do you hold on in those circumstances? And how, you know, so how do you answer that? I think I don't know. How do you answer that question?
You know, I don't think.
Kathy, can you turn your computer a little bit so I can see you?
Well, then you won't be able to see the others. Sorry.
Oh, yes, I will, because all I'm seeing on the other side is a big chair.
Okay.
I was thinking, Jesus says, you know, tells the disciples when they're going before the people, I guess you discover it when you're in the midst of what is going on. You can't plan ahead for being in a war, a concentration camp, or even up to the last minute, the people were thinking it was gonna be all right. And you know, one can only have the deep base, I guess, of your faith ahead of time, that you have grown in the faith, that when these things happen, then you have that to draw
Yeah.
on.
Maybe that's what Peterson is talking about in this whole idea of discipleship, that this is indeed what we practice every day, every moment of our lives. And as we and when, I mean, because it is, you know, tragedy is inevitable in our lives. When we encounter that, we have the, you know, it's that we have the strength we need to get through that. And maybe do you think that's what?
That's the only thing you can.
I like the paragraph on 37 where it says, none of the things that
Can you
happened
tell
to
me
you-"
what section that is in?
Yep, it's still in the section we were in. And it's, he's quoting Romans 8:28,
Yep,
31 through
Romans 8.
32.
It's at the end of the paragraph that starts, all the water in all the oceans.
Gotcha, thank you.
None of the things that happen to you, none of the troubles you encounter have any power to get between you and God,
Yeah.
dilute his grace in you, or divert his will from you.
Mhm.
He gets that from Romans 8:28, 31 through 32.
I hope they're thinking that.
Oh, my God. Wow.
You seen this picture? It's not World War II, it's right now.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I saw that. Well, quoting, yeah, I saw that yesterday, quoting from Romans 8.
This gives me
Hmm.
the shivers.
It sure does. It sure does.
For your sake, we are killed all day long. We are counted as sheep for slaughter. Yet in all these things, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. And then it goes on with the great, neither can separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus. Yeah, I just read that. Nice.
Mhm.
Too.
And
Pastor Kathy,
yeah, go ahead, Jane.
I'm sure some of you saw Nadia Bowles Weber, I think it was from last Sunday, or maybe it was even 2 weeks ago. And she ends with something that's real pertinent to this, I think. She said that you may not be protected from the storm, but the storm, or in this case, the temptation, cannot, shall not, will not separate us from God's love.
Right.
To me, the question is, how do you maintain a belief in God's love in the camps?
Right.
I mean, when I listen to the Psalms at morning prayer, so many of them that are adorations, I think, yeah, I wonder how this played in the camps.
Yeah.
Because surely the Jews in the camps were saying the Psalms.
Oh, I think that's what,
Oh, yeah.
at least the stories say, that that's what got them through, was reciting the Psalms.
I think.
And it's amazing to me
Yes.
that people could
And so the guards would
say the Psalms with conviction
Yeah.
in circumstances like that, when
Yeah.
I am so tempted to say, yeah, right.
Yeah. So for me, what's really a meaningful paragraph is the one just following that quote from Romans. The only serious mistake we can make when illness comes, when anxiety threatens, when conflict disturbs our relationships with other and maybe in world war, is to conclude that God has gotten bored looking after us and has shifted God's attention to a more exciting Christian. Or that God has become disgusted with our meandering obedience and decided to let us fend for ourselves for a while. Or that God has gotten too busy fulfilling prophecy in the Middle East to take time now to sort out the complicated mess we've gotten ourselves into. That is the only serious mistake we can make. It is the mistake that Psalm 121 prevents. The mistake of supposing that God's interest in us waxes and wanes in response to our spiritual temperature. I mean, I think that's would be the danger in the kind of terrorism that we are seeing right now. Is that danger of believing that, or the mistake of supposing that God's lost interest. I mean, Sharon, I think that's the literature of Elie Wiesel, of that God's, what God would, has God lost interest in us?
Or does he not even exist?
Right.
Does God not even exist?
Yeah. Well, and I think that if I were suggesting what's worse, for me, it would be, if God doesn't exist, God doesn't exist. And then there's a free for all and there you go, right? What's worse for me is to think that God has lost interest.
Yes.
And abandoned me.
Yes, that there is in fact a God, and that God has lost his interest and abandoned me. That's worse for me.
Because then I think you start to think, what did I do?
Right,
Why isn't it there?
Yeah.
Exactly.
right.
Or is it when we face extreme peril, it is we who give up on God?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah,
Or forget God.
yeah.
He doesn't desert us, we desert him.
No, I mean, I think that's absolutely true. At least that's what our scriptures tell us, that God does not, even when it feels like it, even when it seems like it, God does not desert us. So the next question, I think, that follows from that, that promise that God does not desert us, is that even, here we sit again in our privileged, cushy existence. What is it that we do and experience that reminds us that indeed God is with us? And then, is there any way we can begin to imagine how these people huddled in subways and pressed in at railroad stations, trying to get on a train to get out of the country? How does one begin to experience, to see, to witness the God who never abandons?
Well, the point is,
You saw that. Anybody see that little video of that little girl singing?
Oh, yeah.
sitting.
Let it go.
Let It Go from Frozen.
Frozen to them.
I think those are that's surely not a sacred song. Might be to some
But it was
people,
helping her.
but it sure was lifting up community.
And that's a huge part of it. Well, then the whole point being in scripture, that's hard for me sometimes. God never abandons us, and of course, Romans 8 goes on to say that it's neither life nor death, that God
Mhm.
does not abandon us, that if even in death, that God is taking care of us. And maybe that's where the discipleship for these refugees are coming, that they're willing, that they believe, that they know that God will take care of them eternally.
Yeah. I mean, that is the point I think that Peterson is making, and that's the point that John Pavlich is making in this Lenten devotional, that God does not rescue us from death, this earthly death, this demise of the physical body. God does not rescue us from that, and God does not rescue us from the suffering that precedes it. That's not who God is. And that's incredibly hard when we believe in a transactional God. If I love you, God, you're gonna take me out of this mess.
But how do you, I don't want to say justify, how do you come to terms with this evil that is in the world?
Yeah.
And I know, I love this verse of Mighty Fortress. One little word shall fell him.
Yeah, you have the right translation too.
But
But
the world with double spilled should threaten to undo us. The Prince of Darkness grim, we tremble not for him, but I'm trembling for what Putin's doing in the
Mhm.
we
world.
all are. And I
get the
think,
goosebumps.
and of course Luther was right up against it too in writing that. And that, to imagine that kind of faith that says we don't tremble for him, the word, the scripture from Jesus was.
His rage we can endure. Can we endure it? Can they endure it? I
Yeah,
mean,
that is humongous. That's so, it's easy to read the words and so hard to do it.
Well, and none of us have ever been in
Yeah,
that
to-
position.
no.
no.
And you know, we have things that show us. You know, we have storytelling, we have sacred stories that show us what that looks like when evil bears down. What does one do? And the only thing that one can do is to speak the words of love. That does not save the physical body, but I think it takes, I absolutely believe that it takes the wind out of the evil for that moment. Anyway,
I think
Christ
Christ showed us the way on his journey to the cross, how to deal with the extreme evil and all the terrible things. And he wavered, you know, a little bit here and there, but yet he showed us the way to God. And I think that's important.
I see this as we are made of two things put together, a body and a soul. Our body endures all kinds of stuff and our soul can too. And to me, the words in the Bible say, God won't abandon my soul, even though all kinds of evil occur to my body. And it can occur to my mind and my soul as well. But God, as long as I am believing in him and following him, he's going to keep on keeping me. He'll probably do it anyway, but he wants me to believe in him. That's how I see this. So no matter what misery I go through, he's still with me.
I like on 38, you know. we're
where,
sitting-
what section
This
is
is
that?
just before the last sentence before they're having traveling companion.
Mhm.
You know, we're sitting here beating ourselves up because we are privileged. But it says, but Psalms 121 says the same faith that works in the big things works in the little things. The God of Genesis 1 who brought light out of darkness is the God of this day who guides you from every evil. So we're looking at this global picture as rightfully we should. And at the same time, to realize that the little things that we might say, oh, you know, God wouldn't have an interest in that, which is the mistake he's saying earlier in the book, that yes, he works in the little things too for us. So we don't have to beat ourselves up quite so badly. I mean, I'm horrified. I just want to do
Well, and we're
more.
horrified about all this in the Ukraine. Yet the reason I think our eyes are on it is because it affects us financially. And they're white people. And why have we not the same concern for people
In
who are
Africa,
suffering just as badly,
Yeah, and that's
but
been on
can do
Facebook.
nothing for us?
Yeah, yeah, and well, you know, I was kind of upset, this is off the beat, I know that some of the Polish people at the border were turning away those that were not white,
Mhm.
Really?
that they were saying, no, you can't come.
Hmm.
So we have within this, we have all this stirring, and God is probably going, I feel badly also for the Russian Christians, or that who are appalled at what's going on.
I have a good picture of one of those too.
I like page 39, the top paragraph. This is part of the first paragraph under traveling companion. Starts in the Christian life is going to God. In going to God, Christians travel the same ground that everyone else walks on, which brings us into the community.
Mhm.
It's, you know, and I think, look, as you often say, looking, the difference is, then it goes on, each step we walk, we know we are preserved by God, we are accompanied by God, we are ruled by God. And then it goes on with a great hymn.
Mhm.
Can I have that at my funeral?
Sure, write it down.
We'll just do hymns.
Mhm.
We'll just sing.
That's all. That's good. That's good.
It's just such a great. And then at the bottom of that, right after the hymn, where he says, the life of faith is a daily exploration of constant and countless ways in which God's grace and love are experienced. Remember the God moments?
Well, and I think that that's the point, actually.
I love that.
That is what followers of Jesus are. That's what discipleship is about. It's about practicing this daily, in and out and in and out. And not, I mean, part of that is, for the big test, I suppose, if we believe that maybe that would happen, but it's the daily grind of following Jesus that, just isn't about Alleluia choruses, but is about
Ordinary.
the ordinary work of falling down in the ditch and getting back up again.
I'm reminded, and the opposite of that is T.S. Eliot's comment that most people are living daily lives of quiet desperation.
Mhm.
And this is the antidote to that.
Yeah. And I don't know that from the outside, that looks much different.
Probably not from other people looking at
I
you.
mean, quiet desperation, I think, is
I should.
I love this last,
status quo. Yeah.
very last
Very.
long
Oh, yeah,
sentence.
I've got
Faith is not a precarious affair of chance escapes from satanic assaults. It's the solid, massive, secure experience of God who keeps all evil from getting inside us. So
Mhm.
we don't become the evil. I
Yeah.
mean, or
And who guards us when we leave and when we return.
I think that's what Jane was speaking to a little bit. Jane Syme was speaking to a little bit too, that evil getting inside us, that we are guarded, that we guard from that.
I think also,
Really,
Jesus, don't let me go, because I can let go of you. So don't
Yeah.
let me go.
which leads us to a conscious relationship, recognizing when something is evil, or even if we don't think it's evil, is bound to get inside us. And recognizing we need to use the discipleship, the constant secure experience of God, because we let evil inside us. It may be very mild, it may be just something nobody else thinks of as wrong for us, but if it is, it's still wrong for a particular person.
And that's part of the adversity that we need to learn from.
But the devil likes to get at us and say, oh, look at God didn't protect you. Ha ha ha. I got you the way. Right. That's why I keep saying, Jesus, don't let me go.
Well, and that's the screw tape letters, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that's the purpose of practice. That's the purpose of saying our morning prayers, whether we feel like it or not.
Focus or not.
That's all about practice. And I do think that all of that practice brings joy. I don't think that the only purpose for all of that practice is that we have our armor in adversity. I think that's a byproduct. But I also think that we do what we do because it brings joy, and because it puts on the forefront of our minds our action, that love is an activity. Love is what we do. And so we practice, we say our prayers, we do our reading, we engage in these things that brings us joy. And it also strengthens our armor. But I don't know.
No, you're right.
For me,
because-
that's not my priority, but it's a side effect.
And even like, and I will admit, in morning prayer, sometimes I have my list and I have to come back and say, God, help me to focus.
Right.
Because the mind tends, my little ADHD mind tends to focus on more than one thing at once. Yeah, I want to look at that too.
And
I wanna look at
that's
that.
part of the reason we do what we do in community as well.
Helps.
Is that on any given day and in any given hour, I am not capable of shouldering the burden of life, right? Yeah, I need everybody else in order to do that.
That's why I'm also amused by people who have this personal relationship.
Yeah, right,
with
I
this, and they just have their own little relationship
I've
and.
never been able to understand.
I don't get how that works.
Either.
No.
You and I would never make that there, never.
I don't get how that works.
Kathy, you spoke of joy.
Yeah,
I don't find that joy as a big ha 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 and having a great time and all that. It's a deep feeling of contentment more than
Very
a
different
description
from
of.
happiness.
right. Yeah, joy is not happiness. Those are two very different things. Yeah.
That's why I have issues with some hymns. One in particular.
I saw a really neat thing on the news this week. It said, I'm hoping I can say this right. There are things that make you happy, but that's not the same as what brings you joy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've been thinking about that all week.
Two
Yeah.
questions, because
Mhm,
we're getting close to time.
mhm.
Chapter 4, Psalm 122 for next week.
Yeah,
And is Barbara there?
no,
What?
and then maybe
She
I have to give,
wasn't there last week
no,
either.
I might have
Who's
to
that?
give her a call. Barbara. I have
Barbara.
her phone number. Barbara who joined us a little bit.
Oh, I guess I have not met her.
And
I've been
Louise
wondering
isn't there
about
either.
And there was
No,
no Cerise today.
yeah,
either,
Cerise joined us for a
No,
little bit.
Cerise just
left.
logged off.
Yeah, was Louise, I was trying to think if she said something.
She's Louise's,
She's
if
from
not
Florida.
en route to Florida.
Florida,
soon,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's
She
right.
was
She
leaving
said,
our- Yeah, she was.
she said she
she's
might
on-
be able to join us. That's right, bye.
she's-
Is she
Bye.
okay now?
2 weeks visiting.
Pardon me?
Rachel.
Is she doing okay now? 'Cause
Louise,
she's still
yeah,
on our prayer list.
yeah, she is. She's good.
Okay.
She was at Mocha yesterday and yeah, she's excited about 2 weeks at Rachel's.
Yeah.
I'd be excited about 4 days a day. now.
Anything else for the good of the group?
Has anybody heard of Michael Latimus lately?
Yeah.
I talked to her. Well, it's not, I mean, she came and ate pancakes on pancake supper.
Right.
I guess that's the last time I talked to
Yeah.
her.
It is.
Yeah. I'll
Yeah,
give her a
she
call.
didn't come for soup.
No, we'll have to call.
And I
her.
have a question because we have some vestry people here. Should I order some, like a nice spring plant for Joe?
Joe
I think so.
Bernhardt?
Yeah.
Yes, I think so.
I think is she starting her treatment?
Yeah, she's getting started.
How
What's
about some,
wrong?
like a daffodil plant or tulips or something?
Yes, right.
I'll get that. I'll take care of that.
I did send her a card, by the way.
Did,
Yeah.
do you
And I
have a
signed it for
question,
the
Sharon?
vestry.
What's
that
wrong with
for?
Joe?
Joe Bernhardt's got cancer, lung
Oh,
cancer.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Hmm.
She's
And she
starting.
was Oh, you're not on Vestra anymore. Yeah, she was very, no, she was very upfront with it
Right.
on
Now,
Tuesday. She's gonna have chemo and radiation prior to surgery.
it's a very good diagnosis. I mean, prognosis, that's the word I want. Prognosis, yeah.
But scary nonetheless.
Undercard.
That's scary nonetheless.
Yeah.
Okie dokie, guys. We'll see ya in church or next week.
Next week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I gotta go get a blood test before my cardio thing is done.